Okay. Hi everyone. Good morning. So my name is Renuka, and all of us are here to present the online programming IYC, and it's an honor to welcome all of you at our first online session of IYC 12. We would like to love to know where are you joining from. So if you can just mention in the comment section about where are you joining from and which country are you from. Also, don't forget to um, screenshot today's session and hashtag us on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and don't forget to mention IYC12 and also our official channel at IYC for Youth. So we would love to hear about your insights of every session that you're following on our StreamYards. And so for now, we're going to begin with our first session for the day, the first online session organized by you and Geneva, Beyond Lab with 11S SV, if I'm correct. Please correct me if I'm wrong. On the topic beyond words, concrete actions for integration, equity in policymaking. I would love to welcome our speakers on the stage to introduce themselves and begin with the session. Give me one moment. Yes. David, do I pronounce your name correct?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having us again. My name is Davide, and I work for the United Nations office in Geneva for the Beyond Lab. And we're gonna talk about it in a second. And thank you again for the opportunity of being here. And we're excited to talk about concrete initiatives that us and our partners are creating to advance intergenerational equity.
Okay, so let's welcome Natalie. You may say your part.
Sure. Thank you so much. And thank you also for the opportunity to join you here to be part of this moment. So my name is Nathalie, and with Davide, I also work at the Beyond Lab at the UN in Geneva, where I lead the Youth Moving Beyond GDP initiative. And I'm very excited about this session. Back to you.
Okay, thank you, Natalie. I will give the word to Livia. Can you please tell us about you? Introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you. My name is Livia Bizikova. I am at the International Institute for Sustainable Development, IISD. I'm based in Ottawa, Canada, and we've been working on Beyond GDP for quite a few years, and I'm going to share some examples of working with countries, what is possible to actually estimate Beyond GDP index, and what it specifically means for education and educating students about Beyond GDP topics. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So I'm very happy to have you here on stage with us, and our viewers can see you live right now. So we are available on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Okay, so I will give the floor to your what you want to present to us today about the Beyond Lab. You would like to know much more about it and learn much more from you guys. So I will give the floor to Davide. I think I pronounced it good this time.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Again, pleasure to be here and welcome all. So this is the second time actually that we're here and we're working for the together with the International Youth Conference. Was first time was on the 11th edition in April, so we're happy to be back. So once again, my name is Davide. I work for the Beyond Lab at UN Geneva. The Beyond Lab is a design space for social innovation, which is anchored in Geneva within the Office of the Director General of the United Nations. And it has a quite a simple yet very complex mission, which is enabling long-term sustainability for current and future generations. The work that we do is based on the example of multilateral agreements, which is of course the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. If we're all here, I'm sure we all know about the SDGs, so I'm not gonna talk in depth about it, because I know we're all familiar with them. But why? And what we are here for as the lab is really trying to work across stakeholders to advance our efforts and progress towards this 2030 Agenda. Yet, working with different partners, but also different stakeholders within society, we are seeing the different obstacles and the different sort of like difficulties that our progress towards the 2030 Agenda is encountering, and we're really noticing that our actual progress on the indicators and the targets of the agenda is not where it's supposed to be. Only 18% of the goals and the targets that we set back in 2015 are on track, and the target are met, and more than 30% of this of the targets are actually witnessing a marginal, if not a marginal progress, if not even a backward progress. So a big part of our work at the lab is also understanding from our different stakeholders that we interface with the reasons why we might not progress towards the SDGs as we wish for, and working with them across stakeholders to try to understand what type of initiatives, frameworks, dialogues are needed to flip the script on this and to really put us in track towards the SDGs, but also to start thinking already today. Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. About a future framework for sustainable development beyond 2030 that could be even more inclusive and participatory than the 2030 Agenda itself. So as you can see, this is sort of a bit of a dual mission of the lab. On one hand, we really working to advance the SDGs and the goals of the 2030 Agenda, but on the other end, we really are in constant sort of dialogue and in constant touch with the different stakeholders across society to understand the priorities and needs for a post-2030 frameworks. And within this exercise, within this sensing exercise, let's say, we have identified four key areas that we called new and systemic lenses to sustainability that emerged from all the different multi-stakeholder conversations that we had as key areas that will define framework post 2030, beyond 2030. That's why we call these also the beyonds, and we'll see in a minute why. So the first macro theme is around regeneration. So moving from simply sustaining to actually regenerating resources within a resource scarcity environment. The second one is around affective science. So what is the role of emotions and behavior and behaviors within to allow us to act or not towards long-term sustainability goals. The third one is intergenerational equity and intergenerational impact as a default to build just futures for all. And the fourth one is what we call the X factor, namely the great unknowns. How can we embrace complexity and unknowns of the future? So we're really working across stakeholders and initiatives to really try to unpack these four concepts. And we're here today together with Natalie to present you two concrete initiatives that we have launched. We have launched very gladly so at the former International Youth Conference back in April. And we're sort of here to again push for these initiatives and update you a bit on how they're going. So this is it for the lab. So the first initiative that we want to talk about, I would like to introduce it with the quite an unusual slide. So here it's 4:45 p.m. So we're already at lunch, but in case to warm you up for the lunch to come. But so why this slide? So it's 2010, and a very famous Italian chef. Of course, I'm biased because I'm Italian as well, so maybe that's why I selected this. But a very famous Italian chef called Massimo Bottura decided to challenge the system, a very traditional Italian dish, a dish of Italian cuisine, which is called tortellini. They are usually served in a broth. And he decided to flip sort of like the recipe and the usual design and actually present only 6 tortellini that are slowly walking in line into a little pond of broth. This caused a lot of uprisings within the Italian cuisine culture, because it's really about like challenging a traditional one. But he came up with a very, very strong reason why he did that really made the narrative better. He wanted to create space for hunger to regenerate. He wanted to for the people that was actually like eating this to think of every single tortellini that they were eating and have the time to regenerate the hunger without like focusing too much on just like consumption. So for him, this was what he meant from his own expertise as a chef for the concept of regeneration. So this was what regeneration was for Massimo Bottura. Changing completely discipline and generation. We are in the 19th century, and so the 18th century actually saw one of the major scientific revolutions with mechanical discovery, and everything seemed to be already discovered by science and the Enlightenment. So it was a big sort of like scientific discovery, scientific revolution moment. But then in the 18th century, people started to have a lingering feeling of asking themselves, what if science is not the solution to it all? What if there are great unknowns that the humans are experiencing and cannot find solution for? How can we actually face these great unknowns and face these great sort of like fears? And that's what sort of like led the overall an overall feeling that became a literary movement, an artistic movement, a cultural movement, which is now known as Romanticism. And one of the biggest symbols of Romanticism is this painting by Friedrich, Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog, where he gives his own interpretation through his own discipline, which is art, of what is the great unknowns and what the great unknowns mean for him. Again, switching centuries and discipline, we are in Norway now in the 70s with a very famous industrial designer that was obsessed with one simple question. He wanted to design something to be used across generations. Instead of creating something that continuously had to be changed as humans grew up, he wanted to design a piece of furniture based on his own expertise in art that could really reduce the depth, the material depth, and the use of resources and the waste across generations. And that's why he decided, after a lot of sort of like research, he decided to come up with what you can see on the screen, which is a very famous design of chair, which is called trap chair. And this was Peter Opsick's interpretation and meaning to Depth to the Future. Last but not least, we're back in the 19th century with one of the most renewed literary figure in the world, Emily Dickinson. She needs very little introduction, but she was having a very hard time in her life, and she was reflecting on what was the force that kept her going and the force that led her to act and never give up. And for her, this was hope, and giving her form of her own preferred form of expression, which was which was poetry, she decided to write a poem which became one of the most famous poems in the world, which is "Hope is the thing with feathers." So this was her own interpretation of what hope that is constructive means. So why did I give you these 4 examples? I'm not crazy as well. I know that they can sound sort of random, but I gave you these 4 examples for 2 main reasons. First of all, the first reason is the following. You can see how from the chair that you're sitting now to the literature that you consume to the lunch that you're going to have today to the art that you actually see, you can see that there are key elements of long-term sustainability in everything you do and in everything you live. So sustainability is not just a matter that is restrained in United Nations walls or in Zoom calls like this one, but it's actually spread it across every dimension of your life, as sustainability is a way of living, right? So whenever you're considering to approach this the topic of sustainability, think of your own life and think where sustainability lays in your daily sort of like actions and so on. And the second reason why I said that is because what we believe at the lab and with our partners is that before acting on something, we have to understand what that something means. We have to give our own meaning and interpretation to the specific concept, but we also have to be mindful of the different interpretation that other people might give to that element. And how can this interpretation coexist and work together to compensate one another and actually lead to something that is collaboratively moved forward. So this is why we launched in April an initiative that is now open and is gonna close at the last day of October, where similarly to the different examples that I showed you, where we're asking young people, and not only, actually people across generations and across geographies, to give their own personal interpretations to the 4 key elements that I just presented you. So regeneration, the great unknowns, hope, and depth to the future. We're asking, what is your meaning to each of them or to one selected of them based on your own expertise? So if you are listening now and you are a scientist, how would a scientist design sort of the great unknowns? How would a scientist, I don't know, calculate the great unknowns? Or if you're joining in and you're an artist, how would you paint constructive hope? If you're an architect, how would you design buildings that are built on regenerations, and so on and so forth? So this is sort of like the rationale. We're going back to why we decided to present you with this different examples. So the submission is really there. It's there for multi-format. So if you're a writer, you can submit a written piece. If you're an artist, you can submit a piece of art. If you're a chef, you can submit a recipe. The more the merrier. And you can submit it through the Beyond Challenge, which you can scan through the Beyond Challenge platform that you can scan at this QR code. And the sort of like the most original ideas and the most original interpretations will have the sort of chance to win several prizes. First of all, there will be the chance to come to the United Nations office in Geneva through a sponsored trip and present your ideas to leaders across sectors, from governments to academia and civil society and more. But also you will have the chance to participate to the different initiatives that UN Geneva is promoting, but also the partners of UN Geneva, like the International Institute for Sustainable Development, is promoting. So, for instance, you will have the chance to present your ideas into United Nations podcasts, magazines, and knowledge hubs. And also, you will have the chance, for instance, among the different prizes, to also take part to a 6 months residency program with the United Nations in Geneva. So I'll stop here. Sorry, I spoke a bit too long, but I hope to receive. We hope to receive your ideas and your visions and your interpretations of what the beyonds mean for you. And we can drop the link to the platform in the chat. And if there is anything, any question regarding this, we're very happy to respond to them. And feel free to reach out to beyondlab@un.org. I'll stop here and I hand over to Natalie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Davide, and good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. And also thank you again for the opportunity to present our Youth Moving Beyond GDP initiative. And I'll be sure actually to move quickly with regards to time, but I'll be sure to share how to learn more and how to get engaged. I'll structure my presentation around 3 quick questions: is why did we launch this initiative at the UN? What is it? And how it's operating. So on the next slide, you can see sort of the why. So there is really a broad recognition that GDP alone is not a suitable measure. I don't know how to move to the next slide. If someone could operate that would be fantastic. Thank you so much. So very quickly on the why, we know that GDP, there's broad recognition that it's not sufficient to measure progress on sustainable development across its 3 dimensions: the economic, the social, and the environmental dimension. Even actually for the economic side, GDP struggles to reflect today's complex realities, such as, for example, globalization, as it measures, as we know, the final goods and values produced within a country within a given year. And therefore, actually, today's interconnectedness, such as through all the intermediate products, isn't fully captured. Or, for example, everything related to intangible and digital economies, as investments in research, innovation, or software, for example, they're only partly measured and often only when sold as a final product. But actually, even more importantly, to measure sustainable development, there is an extraction bias in GDP. As you know, GDP counts these newly produced final goods and services and therefore ignores more long-term value, really reinforcing actually extractive and short-term practices. And GDP also has these blind spots, such as, for example, on the environmental side. It really treats natural resource depletion as a gain and not a loss. For example, if there is reconstruction after a natural disaster, it does increase GDP, which we don't believe really reflect actually improved well-being. And similarly, the tree is only valued once cut and not as it is providing the oxygen that we need or preserving biodiversity. And maybe the last point on GDP, and very happy to share more also in different contexts here, is it obviously overlooks equity, health, care work, the informal economy, self-consumptions, as this is actually only partly actually estimated as part of GDP. So these limitations really create policy risks as they encourage more this short-term growth over long-term sustainability, which is obviously particularly problematic if we use it as a measure to measure progress on sustainable development. And we actually also know that sustainable development really rests on intergenerational equity. There's really this idea that meeting today's needs to happen without compromising those in the future. And yet, as we see, these current systems do prioritize these short-term gains, creating what we call, and Davide has alluded to it, a debt to future generations. So at the Beyond Lab, we believe that, yes, young people are not just the inheritors of those systems, they're actually active change makers today. And this conference here, and you all gathering that, is actually the testament to exactly this. As young people, our perspectives have always been essential actually to advancing sustainable practices, social innovation, or even creative economies. And this is why at the Beyond Lab, we want to bring intergenerational perspective into this very process. And this is, thank you so much, exactly the objective of the Youth Moving Beyond GDP initiative. It was launched at a very important moment, the Summit of the Future last year, where actually all member states agreed to urgently develop a framework on measures of progress of sustainable development that complement and goes beyond GDP. And the Youth Moving Beyond GDP initiative, it directly responds to this agreement, making sure that intergenerational equity is embedded in this process from the start. So building on actually the convening power of the UN, our objective is to foster inclusive and transformative engagement of young people and promote the needs of future generations and current generations in this process. And as everything we do in the lab, we do this in partnership with great organizations. In this case, it's Rethinking Economics International, as well as UN Trade and Development. And exactly bringing to the how. So how are we going to do this? 4 points. One is youth engagement. So making sure we bring these perspectives, your perspectives, into UN and national convenings. The other one is youth-led policy recommendations, really drawing from the insights of this initiative. The other one is that we launched a youth network, really serving as a sounding board to member states and high-level experts. And our last intention is really grassroots action, ensuring bottom-up approaches actually reshape these economic systems at this more international level. And this is actually the most exciting part of my short presentation. It's an invitation for you to join the youth network on Beyond GDP that I just mentioned. So please scan this QR code to register to become part of this movement. Maybe very quickly, while we actually keep this slide on so people have a chance to scan it, I can just very briefly go over of saying that it was, to give you a bit of background, launched in February 2024 with the global essay competition. Since then, we've been at the Summit of the Future with this initiative. We've been at the Financing for Development conference with this initiative, where we launched our youth network. As part of the the Secretary General has now a high-level expert group on Beyond GDP. A youth representative was invited as really the other panelists as part of the two co-chairs for their first consultations. And looking ahead, we will organize actually a side event together with this high-level expert group at the World Social Summit, where we aim to bring your policy recommendations to this global stage. And maybe just a last note is that we recognize that there are many Beyond GDP processes happening around the world. And we have chosen now this specific process of the UN Secretary General's high-level expert group. This is the one that we can influence, that we're engaged in, again, leveraging our competitive advantage at the UN to really connect young people with this very specific process. Lots of information, but I did want to make sure I leave enough time for my colleague Livia. So with that, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, David. Happy to share our work, and I really keep it to like 3 minutes. Like this will be the fastest overview of Beyond GDP efforts. So why? So we were really interested in looking at, is it possible now using as much as possible country data to measure Beyond GDP in specific countries? So next slide. So as Natalie said, there are many questions about why there are challenges with using GDP and having such a prominent place when we deciding about investments and policies, how to spend money. And the UN Secretary General basically captured it in his document, saying that GDP does not capture fully the complexities of current challenges we are facing. So what can we do? Next slide. So in general, there are 4 approaches how to address shortcomings of GDP. And one is to design dashboards of indicators. This is, for example, the SDG type, but there used to be sustainability indicators and all kinds of indicators that measured the progress with sustainable development and not only the economic side of GDP. The second are these well-established indicators. The most well-known one is the Human Development Index. There is the multidimensional poverty index, and these help again to complement the human side, the inequality side of GDP. And then there is the index that we use, which is called comprehensive or inclusive wealth. This is an index that will put the wealth of the country next to GDP. So as Natalie said, when we measure GDP, we measure income from the assets that the country has. It can be forest, skills, machinery, industry, how much money it can make. But the wealth approach measures how much the assets are actually valuable. And it's very important, even from a personal perspective, from a household perspective, you need to fix those assets. You need to invest in those assets. So because if the asset base, the wealth is good, you can produce the income, which is the GDP. Next slide, please. So when we looked at the countries, we were really interested, can countries measure the wealth approach, measure comprehensive wealth to be put next to GDP. We worked in 3 countries, Ethiopia, Indonesia, and Trinidad and Tobago. All the reports are up there. When we measure the produce capital, which is the infrastructure, roads. We measure natural capital, which is the nature, the forest, the biodiversity, but also agriculture, fisheries, human capital, which is the skills of the people, social capital, which are the connection and communities, and financial capital, which is basically the financial assets and the liabilities. When you look at those circle diagrams, you can see in the light blue are the data and information that came from the countries. So you can see that even now, in Ethiopia, Indonesia, and Trinidad and Tobago, more than 70% of data was available in the country. So you can start measuring now. So beyond GDP is not something that, we need to prepare, we need to decide, and then in the future we will measure. A lot of things can be done now to actually start advancing that topic. Next slide, please. So these are the types of things that you can come up with this kind of assessment. When we say beyond GDP, what we would learn if we have another index. For example, we learned that in investing into infrastructure, many countries spend quite overwhelmingly large amount of resources, meaning money, on investing into fossil fuel-based infrastructure, investing into industry that does not develop, does not create employment, does not create well-being. We also found, and Natalie already talked about this, that for natural capital, countries invest very little into improve their natural capital, like sustainable land management, improving fisheries, water quality, and things like that. All the 3 countries had a very low investment. Human capital, which is all why we are here, it's very important. Biggest assets from most countries in the world are their people, and people create income. And so countries were able to capitalize on the skills of the people, but again, there's a very strong underinvestment into education over time. And we also looked at the 20-year period. So when I say over time, we mean over the last 20 years. Next slide, please. So what can we do about that? When we implemented this work in the 3 countries, we worked with amazing universities in the 3 countries, Mekelle University, Universitas Indonesia, and University of West Indies. And we worked there with PhDs and master students to help us collect the data and calculate. Next slide. So what we found is that by working with the countries, we get very good insight about the skill development, the education, about beyond GDP, about how to calculate or measure beyond GDP things, and what is the knowledge at the universities. Next slide, please. And what we found, and this is kind of related to the youth network efforts, is that while the people who we were engaged with, they were very aware of problems with GDPs, with specific examples, including from their own countries, there was very little knowledge about what to do about it. So if we measure GDP, but also we measure something else, what that something else would be, how to measure. And that's why, and this is the last slide, we are also very excited to announce a learning tool for Beyond GDP. Official online launch will happen on the 14th of October. So please go at ISD website, and soon it will be posted, and it will really focusing on why GDP is has so many benefits but so many challenges, what to do about, what to measure when it comes to Beyond GDP, and finally deep dive into comprehensive wealth. So the launch is coming in a few weeks. We are very excited about that, and the idea is really that it's being used by universities and other educational institutions for students to learn online about Beyond GDP efforts and how to implement that. Thank you so much.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for the very insightful information to share with us this. All this information. I see a lot of comments from our viewers that it's very important learning about GDP. It's essential at this moment. And yes, a wonderful topic. If we go through the comments to see some of those points. So someone said that she believes intergenerational equity is policymaking encompasses and ensures that today's decisions do not compromise the rights, opportunities, and resources of future generations. So, do you have anything to add on this comment for our viewer?
No, definitely. I mean, that the sort of like the overall sustainable development idea itself is really about not compromising the needs of future generation while meeting the needs of current ones. So
And
yeah.
especially when it comes, when we talk beyond GDP, the idea is to move from that very short-term focus of GDP. When in the media you have like a quarterly number, oh, our GDP has grown by 0.5%, oh, that is so bad, and that kind of thing. So it's really getting that long-term thinking and by the wealth, but other indicator system to try to build that underlying system that manages country to sustain itself and the people, instead of kind of creating a very fast-paced short-term growth, which is, even countries that grow very fast, even they have a lot of challenges coming in the growth.
Thank you,
Great.
Lydia. And yes, I think if I may, I think that's also sort of to unify a bit the different initiatives is really around what you interpret, right? Your interpretation of progress. What does it mean to progress? What is growth? What is progress for you? We had maybe more like a GDP oriented interpretation a while back. We still have it, but is it still the correct one? How would you give your own definition of interpretation of growth and progress? What does it really mean for you? And that's why I think the work that Livia just presented, the work that Natalie is doing, and the work that sort of like we are all doing at the lab is really also to try to sense what the values and priorities are for especially younger generations, because they're the ones that will inherit this planet.
Thank you.
And maybe if I could
so-
just add to obviously sense these priorities, but also bring them into the policy making. I think this is exactly the role that we are also the role that we're trying to fulfill here, is to say young people have obviously expertise, lived experiences, but also very specific national and local knowledge, again, that as much as there will be this universally applicable set of indicators that will come out of the process, it will be equally important for it actually to be able to be applied at national level. I think, again, this is where this youth network, that young people, all the work that Livia is doing also in terms of capacity building, can really make the difference to make sure that it's not just another set of indicators come out, but something that can really apply to live realities and lives of people around the world. Thank you.
Thank you. So we got the question from our viewer. Does GDP ensure that marginalized communities are represented? They are sometimes misrepresented in the data or left out. So the floor is all yours to comment on this question.
Definitely, it's very challenging to represent marginalized communities, especially in these very highly aggregated numbers. When you have one number for one issue for a country, one of the talks about beyond GDP is also now around if you would like to, have it also be applicable more for subnational levels, for example, cities, regions, so that GDP is a little bit used for larger regions like provinces or states, but it still remains a strong national indicator. So one of the beyond GDP discussion is how to get that more granularity and address critical issues in terms of inequality, for example, care economy, gender, and other things that are often completely left out from beyond GDP, but it's definitely a very challenging task to be, designing such an indicator set.
Thank you, Natalie. No, sorry, Livia. Thank you. So I got one more question from viewer, and the question is: are there any possibilities of undeveloped countries to be enforced on how they can increase GDP? So, anyone to answer that?
So could you repeat the question? Unless, Livia, you got it, then happy, obviously, for you as the expert.
Okay. Are there any possibilities of undeveloped countries to be enforced on how they can increase GDP?
That's an interesting question because it comes with the intention of increasing GDP. And I think the intention of the two initiatives that we've just mentioned is the idea of actually how do we complement and go beyond GDP. Of saying, yes, there is this economic output that is obviously an important component, but GDP is intended to measure this. But for now and for the longest time, GDP has been used as a proxy to use progress on sustainable development. But we hope that with our presentations today, we have been able to contribute to the discussion of saying, well, we need to go beyond and complement this measure to actually be able to capture the two other dimensions of sustainable development, environmental and social, or the different capitals that Livia has just mentioned, to actually have a better understanding of the progress we're making as a country and as also a community of countries.
Yes, and maybe I think very well summarized with Natalie, maybe just a few points. Absolutely. So often when we focus on GDP, the major challenge is the very short-term focus. So we want to grow the GDP fast over and over again, which means that we invest into things in a very small scale, but we looked at 20 years. And then, so the question is not necessary, and we can go, there's a lot of talks about the growth and post-growth and these growth communities, but it's definitely how to invest better. For example, if you invest in the educational system, short term, it may, the money that you invested in the educational system, you could have invested into some industry, and you could have grown your GDP faster. But over time, that investment into education will pay off, and you will be able to create income through people who are well educated and have better jobs than very low paid jobs. The other part is, for example, is a misalignment. So sometimes countries want to invest strongly into industry and spend a lot of money on investing into machinery, factories, related infrastructure. But for example, they see agriculture and other sectors that many people are employed as something that doesn't contribute much to GDP, so let's not invest into that. But over time, the agriculture starts deteriorating, the natural capital starts deteriorating, while sometimes the industry, if you don't get it right, it may not deliver the growth and the income for the country and the people as you may wished. So the kind of the beyond GDP is really trying to get that longer term lens next to that very short term lens of GDP, so that we don't lose sight where we are going or how this could help us in the long term, instead of being very, very short term focused.
Great, thank you, Livia. We're going to end the session. So let me just ask from my side a question, if it's possible. Okay, so what message would you like to leave with young people watching today about their role in shaping a more sustainable and equitable future? So if we could hear from Natalie, Livia, and Davide, what are your perspective, what are your sharings with us, and inspirations that our viewers can get from you all?
I would say whether it is in the initiatives that we have presented or others, there is so much that actually world leaders that come to the UN exactly as we speak now can actually learn and leverage from the expertise, the experiences that you bring. So get involved.
Thank you. So that's a very difficult question. So one thing is that when also many of the comments, let's not forget about the macroeconomic aspect. So often when we think about sustainability, we really think about the forest, the biodiversity, the people, which is very important. But when governments make decisions, they deal with this highly aggregated data like GDP. So let's not forget all these other things that drive decisions. So engage with decision makers, engage in the beyond GDP debate, because it's been going on for 70 years and maybe now something is going to happen. So you have a great opportunity to get your views and inputs on that. And then also engage with your educational system and schools so that they teach about things like this. The schools came along talking about climate change, biodiversity, sustainability, but this aspect is not that much there. So that also could be something for you to ask, to be also having information on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Livia and Natalie. I think these were the best suggestions, right? So I don't have much to say, but I just want to say maybe from a more like personal view, or you are brilliant youth from all over the world, and I know that there's a lot of pressure on youth nowadays to be the change and make the change, and sort of like we've been thrown the hot potato maybe from other generations. So I can understand that there's a lot of pressure, and a lot of times we don't understand where to start. There are many different initiatives out there. So of course, get informed, but I would invite you to understand what in your daily life, what is your own sphere, immediate sphere of influence, right? Where you can actually have an impact, because it's never small. It's never a small impact. So if we all started by analyzing what is our most immediate sphere of influence and impact, then it's little drops that make the ocean, right? So don't be overwhelmed, don't be scared, and uh, every step counts. Like as they said, a journey of 1,000 steps starts with a little one. So keep going. Thank you very much, Renuka, and thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, David. And Davide, sorry for pronouncing your name. Uh, Livia, thank you very much. Natalie, thank you very much. On behalf of IYC and our team, I want to thank you for your valuable information, perspective, share your knowledge, sharing with us all of this information. And I believe our viewers should be really should have gained a lot of knowledge from this session, and that's a purpose also. And I hope they can they have scanned the code, the barcode, to join you as well. And yes, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to our speakers, Natalie, Davide, and Livia, and also to our viewers. Thank you for watching us, and I hope you enjoyed our session. Um, yes, if there's anything you would like to add, still is you are free for now, and I don't think there are any comments coming anymore. Okay, so everyone saying thank you very much, and yes, bye bye.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Livia. Thank you, Daphne. And until the next time.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye bye.